All right, let's dive straight into the world of systemic functional linguistics, or SFL for short. Today, we're going to deconstruct the theoretical architecture, the literal invisible gravity that holds all human communication together. If you've ever wondered how a seemingly random string of sentences actually transforms into a coherent, unified text, well, you are exactly in the right place. We are looking at the fundamental physics of meaning. Let's get into it.
So, here's our structural roadmap for today. We'll start with the architecture of language, move on to text as a semantic unit, and then uncover texture and invisible cohesion. After that, we're looking at directionality in text, diving into context, situation, and register, and finally, we'll unpack the tripartite metafunctional spectrum.
Okay, let's start with Section 1, the architecture of language.
To really grasp SFL, we first have to visualize language not just as some flat list of grammar rules and vocabulary words, but as a vast multiple coding system. Basically, language operates on a framework of stratification. Think of it kind of like a three-story building. At the very top floor, we have the semantic system. This is the realm of pure abstract meaning. But, meaning needs a vehicle to get around, so we descend to the second stratum, the lexico-grammatical system. This is where your abstract meaning gets coded into actual wording, your grammar and your vocabulary. Finally, that wording has to actually enter the physical world, right? So we descend to the ground floor, sounding or writing. This is the phonological or orthographic expression.
And this model brilliantly illustrates exactly how those layers interact. As Halliday and Hasan point out, cohesion is expressed right through this stratal organization. Meaning is realized, or coded, as form, and then that form is recoded as expression. It's a continuous downward cascade of realization. Think about it. You don't just speak words out of nowhere. You translate an abstract semantic intent into a grammatical structure, and then you push those structures out into the world as sound waves or ink on a page.
Moving right along to Section 2, text as a semantic unit.
Now, zooming in from that massive overarching architecture, we arrive at the actual output that we interact with every single day, the text itself. Halliday asserts that a text isn't just a grammatical supersentence. It's not simply a bunch of clauses stacked on top of one another like Lego bricks. Rather, a text is a complete edifice tied together by meaning, completely independent of its physical size. A text can be a single one-word cry for help, or it can be a massive multi-volume encyclopedia. The crucial thing that makes it a text is its semantic unity.
And this brings us to a huge paradigm shift in how we study linguistics: constituency versus realization. Look, senses, clauses, and phrases, those are built through structural constituency. A clause consists of noun phrases and verb phrases. But a text does not consist of sentences in that same structural way. Instead, a text is realized or encoded by sentences. The unity of a text is of a completely different kind than the structural unity of a single sentence. It's a really important distinction.
Which perfectly sets up Section 3, texture and invisible cohesion.
So if rigid grammatical structure doesn't hold the text together across sentence boundaries, what is the invisible gravity that actually does? How do we intuitively know we're reading a cohesive paragraph and not just a randomized list of dictionary sentences? Well, the answer lies in what SFL calls texture. Texture relies entirely on non-structural cohesive ties. While grammar works within the strict boundary of a single sentence, cohesion leaps across those boundaries. We're talking about semantic relationships that establish links completely independent of grammatical rules. That texture, that is exactly what makes a text a text.
Let's look at a really concrete example to see how this builds. Check out this little snippet from a cookery book. Wash and core 6 cooking apples. Put them into a fireproof dish. Notice the word them here. By itself, them is an empty vessel, right? It means nothing on its own. It requires a non-structural cohesive tie pointing backward to 6 cooking apples in that previous sentence to establish an identity of reference. That connection linking the two? That is a cohesive tie. It's literally the physics of meaning in action.
Let's move to Section 4, directionality, pointing in text. Because language unfolds over time, this cohesive pointing isn't just static. It's a highly dynamic, logical process that happens in real time as we read or listen. Cohesion acts chronologically, and we can actually map this right onto a timeline. When a word points backward to something we've already established, like our apple example, we call that anaphora. But sometimes a word points forward to upcoming information to create suspense or a logical setup, and that is cataphora. And then sometimes the text points completely outside of itself into the physical environment of the speakers, like if I said, "Hey, look at that over there," which we call exophora. As this A to B diagram from Halliday and Hasan shows, directionality is built right into the core of the SFL framework. The system fully accounts for the fact that time is constantly ticking forward. There's a logical dependence between elements. Element A provides the necessary source for the interpretation of element B. This isn't just some structural accident, it is a fundamental requirement for continuous human thought.
All right, Section 5, Context, Situation, and Register.
Texts, of course, absolutely do not exist in a sterile vacuum. They are constantly enveloped by an environment. The anthropologist Branislaw Malinowski famously called this the context of situation. To really grasp how texts relate to their environments, think of instantiation kind of like climate and weather. The overall linguistic system, or the register you're using, is the broader climate. It's the predictable, long-term pattern of how people speak in a courtroom versus, say, how they speak at a football game. The specific daily text you produce in that exact moment, whether that's writing a quick email or chatting with a friend, that's the weather. The weather is just a localized instance of the broader climate.
Now, this communicative climate, or environment, is defined by 3 specific variables that are constantly interacting with each other. First up is the field. This is simply what is actually happening. What's the purpose of activity? Second is the mode. What is the channel of communication? Are we dealing with a spoken monologue, a written manual, a rapid-fire text thread? And third is the tenor. Who is taking part and what are their social roles? Are we best friends or is this a boss talking to an employee?
And that brings us to our final section, Section 6, the tripartite metafunctional spectrum.
Okay, here is where SFL truly sets itself apart as a model. Those 3 situational variables we just mentioned, field, tenor, and mode, they don't just float around the text abstractly. They directly map onto the internal wiring of the language itself through what we call the metafunctional spectrum. Language is literally doing 3 things simultaneously. First, language observes reality through the ideational metafunction. This expresses our content and experience, linking directly to the field. Second, language intrudes socially through the interpersonal metafunction, expressing our attitudes and judgments, linking directly to the tenor. And third, language forms cohesive structures through the textual metafunction, generating that internal texture we just talked about, linking directly to the mode. So every single sentence you utter is firing on all 3 of these cylinders at the exact same time. It's absolutely brilliant.
Which leaves us with this final, really provocative thought. If cohesion is indeed the invisible gravity of language, and we can map exactly how it functions across semantic strata, how might we use this physics engine to diagnose breakdowns in communication? When a conversation completely derails, or when an AI language model struggles to produce truly coherent text, SFL gives us the ultimate diagnostic toolkit to find out exactly which invisible thread just snapped. Whether you're a cognitive scientist or honestly just someone trying to write a better email, I hope this structural roadmap has completely transformed the way you see the words you use every single day. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and until next time, keep analyzing the matrix.